places like the United Kingdom, France, and other parts of the industrialized northern hemisphere, finally opened up to what we can refer to as the darker nations, the two-thirds world, inhabitants of the Caribbean, Latin America, and Africa. And so, for instance, if you were a member of what was known as the British Commonwealth, whether you were from Ghana, a former colony of the British Empire, or Jamaica, and other countries of that sort, you had not open access, but easier access to to Britain on that basis. Opportunities also opened up here in the United States thanks to reforms in what was known as the Immigration and Naturalization Act of 1965 that once and for all opened up access for people of just diverse backgrounds, including people of Afro-Caribbean and African descent, Afro-Latino backgrounds, to finally have fuller access to the United States. Once again, it's none of this is talking about open borders, because even as we're subject to debates nowadays about immigration and the presence of people of foreign birth within the United States, of undocumented workers, of folks who are referred to as quote-unquote illegal immigrants. There's always been a tension within the countries that are receiving people of African descent who were born elsewhere into their borders. That debate is raging in parts of Europe, where African immigrants are now being victimized, being beaten, being deported.
Right. And we see that in France recently.
Oh, very much so.
But
with the Senegalese, with
right.
the Algerians and the like. Yeah.
But you saw that before in the 50s in England, because they wanted workers to come, and yet they subjected them to these discriminatory laws, that they wanted to limit them.
Well, what also happened with England is it becomes a twofold problem. Because of more liberal, and I use that word intentionally, more liberal policies through the Labour Party, which was a strong proponent of this. You had more conservative elements of society, both within Parliament, trying to push back, literally push back what they thought was going to be an invasion of people of African descent, who were then, because now there were more opportunities or entitlements that are being offered to people, such as the start of universal health care in the United Kingdom, right? That was, or universal education, right? That if you get more people, especially more black people, who need health care, education, social services, and their equivalent of Social Security, right? That's going to take away from white Brits what they're entitled to, what they and their children, their children's children need. So suddenly, then race becomes a point of tension and a problem, which then lends itself to a more explosive kind of racism, where hate groups such as the National Front were formed, and they take on aspects that we're familiar with in the States of white hate groups like the Klan or neo-Nazis. And so what you had enacted in the Houses of Parliament as far as negative or racist policies against people of color, they were acting out on the streets in terms of racial violence and hate crimes. The National Front is.
So do you think that the behavior of whites toward black immigrants post-World War II was similar to the behavior of whites in the United States toward black people during the migration period right before or at the beginning of the Harlem Renaissance, right? Right after World War I? Was it similar?
With what you're saying. maybe not the same in size or number of racial, what we call them race riots, or outbursts or occasions of that kind of violence. Maybe not the same in magnitude, but definitely the same in origin and inspiration for these, and also the consequences are similar. And let me explain that. There was this period, most scholars refer to it as the Red Summer of 1919, but it's actually a longer period, wherein as black soldiers were returning to the United States, as a spirit of racial pride and militancy that many folks now look back at and refer to as the new Negro spirit started to take hold. The white backlash or response to that was to stop it. They were fearful of it. They were suspicious that blacks no longer knew their place. And so as a way of putting black people, men and women, boys and girls, back in their place, it was done through violence, through fear, intimidation, and murder. And in a variety of cities, East St. Louis, Atlanta, later episodes of the same phenomenon would happen, most famously in North Tulsa, Oklahoma, as well as Rosewood, Florida. But this violence was all over the map. We're talking about parts of Chicago, New York, and elsewhere, where prosperous and stable black communities were burned to the ground, were based on allegations of interracial rape, black men supposedly raping white women, or issues of the need to set things straight as far as angry white mobs going into black neighborhoods, and just literally in a spirit of vigilante violence, saying that they were looking for robbers or looking for criminals, but then killing or destroying everything in sight. And in fact, to the point where in the situation of North Tulsa, what many folks more commonly refer to as Black Wall Street, you even had the use of airplanes. And the first time that this had happened in American history, airplanes were used to drop bombs on black sections of the town, in order to make sure that the crowds were either killed or dispersed. And so when we see the kind of racialized violence that was perpetrated in Europe, in the I would say especially in the 60s and later, it didn't involve that level of severity, but still it was just as ferocious. The antagonism, the animosity was there, but interestingly enough, they didn't go to those nth degrees. They didn't go as big with their violence as their white American counterparts.
Okay, I wanna shift a little bit. One of the things that you did say, and I don't know if you want to speak to this, that I thought